George Kilpatrick, inspiration for the nation, celebrating people we feel good about. Man, I've been trying to get this brother on for a minute, right? What you are about to experience, and I'm really, really serious about this, is a brother that's I'm gonna say, make you think about some things that you have never really considered, right? Resmaa Menakem is a licensed clinical social worker, healer, therapist, who introduced me to something that I'm still amazed by. And this is how historically our bodies are holding the history and trauma and the love, okay, of our people, and how our bodies react to it, and how we're not even conscious of the fact. This is my interpretation now. That we're not even conscious of the fact that in our DNA is unaddressed pain, unaddressed hurt, unaddressed love, right? That and then also because of that, how we then respond in relationship, not only to ourselves but to one another, and which in my view really helps to explain a lot of how we move in this world. Author of My Grandmother's Hands and other books, author of The Quaking of America, and a new book coming out in just a minute. We're going to talk about Monsters in Love. But brother, he's a specialist in what we call somatic therapy, somatic abolitionism. Now, I know right there, then I know y'all said, "What, George? You already got me." Right?
That's right.
But brother, it's so good to see you. New York Times bestseller, doing this work, man. You are doing this work. And so, and I got to tell you, I do some work in gender-based violence prevention. You're also about that.
That's right.
And my whole team, where I work, a lot of people know that I work at the Bear House here in the community, sexual violence, gender-based violence, and I work specifically with helping men to understand their role in preventing.
Yes.
The whole clinical team has my grandmother's hands. They're passing it around.
That's it.
With all of that being said, we want to welcome Resmaa Menakem to the program.
Thank you, brother. It's good to be here, man. I when you hit me back, it's hard to get in touch with me, man, just because so much stuff's happening. But when you hit me back on the DM, I was like, yeah, well, let's just I got a little space, so let's go in and do it. So
let's go ahead.
I'm looking forward to this, brother.
Let's talk about your work though, and let's lay the foundation for the work that you do, especially around, as you describe it, white body supremacy and the impact that white and Black bodies have on the way we move in this country.
Yeah. Well, brother, so whenever I start talking, whenever I do my work, from doing work, gender-based work, you have to start with some type of philosophy first. You can't just go in there and work with, especially Black men, and get them to begin to kind of look at themselves in society, look at themselves in their culture, look at themselves in their community. You can't just go in there and go off the dome. You got to have some type of philosophy, right? And so one of my organizing rubrics, or one of the organizing pieces, like foundation, what moors me, is a very simple concept. And it's the concept around white body supremacy, right? And what I mean by that is that we live in a structure by which the white body deems and has deemed itself the supreme standard by which all bodies, humanity, shall be measured structurally and philosophically. If you don't understand that, then everything else will confuse you. Poverty rates will confuse you. Economics will confuse you. Education will confuse you. Gender relations, all of that will confuse you if you don't understand that we are in a construct, or we're working in a construct whereby the white body has deemed itself the standard of humanness. Now, what does that mean for Black people? What that means for Black people is that we have been enveloped in this structure for 400 years, right? And one of the things you know, brother, one of the things you know from your work is that when you are involved in a structure or a system or a home by which violence is occurring, you don't just pick up the victim stuff, you also pick up the perpetrator stuff.
Yes, yes.
Right? No matter how much consciously you want to say, I ain't gonna grow up to be like him. I'm not going to grow up to be like her. I'm just not going to do it. No matter how much your conscious says that, you pick up on the things that your caregivers' bodies lean into and recoil from, whether you agree with it or not. And so I believe the same thing applies to Black bodies, that we have picked up things in this structure, in this society, that actually reinforces white body supremacy, even when we don't want it to. Things like colorism, things like sexism, things like transphobia, like all of those things are products of a structure that has been vertically imparted into us, and then we play it out on each other's Black and brown bodies. So that's where I start.
And so starting there then, how did you situate yourself in that understanding? Because I'm thinking that this has got to be, I know other folks are doing somatic work, but to situate your practice in that theory, right, is bold. And I want to just name that, right? So how did you come to understand it that way? And then we get into what you might describe as traumatic retention.
So it has happened over the course. I've been doing this work for 30 years, right? And so when I look back on how I came to the place that I am right now, there have been stops and starts and fits and people saying you're going the wrong way, and people saying, that's you reverse racism and all of that type of stuff. And something about both the people that I come from, both in terms of historically, and the people that I come from in terms of my grandmother and my grandfather and blah, 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 right? It kind of conditioned me to be able to go, yeah, I hear you, but I'm gonna keep moving. And so this idea, so one of the things that kept happening in my life is that I would run across white people or run across people who were in the liberation movements that would say things like white supremacy. And what started to happen is that the idea of white supremacy started to become, a word started to land in my body, and the word was operation and operationalization. And what happened is that when you hear the term white supremacy, people nod and they go, yes, that's wrong. White supremacy is wrong, right? But what I started to do was think, wait a minute now. Not when I'm hearing it, it's not just that I want to nod that it's wrong. Something about it in my body feels incomplete. It doesn't seem like it's getting at what is actually happening when we say that term. So when I started to play with that, one of the things I came up with was this idea, not just white supremacy. When you say white supremacy, many times you have a sense around your head area, like, oh yeah, it's a very cognitive term, right? When I say white body supremacy, now all of a sudden there's more weight to it, right? That the idea that the white body, not just the idea of white supremacy, but the idea that the white body has conditioned itself to and created a structure whereby it is deemed the standard of humanness. And so for me, when I landed on that and I said white body supremacy, and I let it marinate and I wrote stuff down on it, and I came back to it 3 weeks later and just kind of kept going back and forth, it started to make more sense just in terms of the construct and operationalize for me, this is what's at play. This is how it functions, as opposed to this is the theory behind it.
Right. And so then that theory and that function and that practice,
that's the piece,
right? That practice of white body supremacy, the impact that it has and how it shows up.
Yes,
right. And so since my grandmother's hands, we've had a couple of books. We've had The Insurrection.
That's right.
On January 6th.
That's right.
Which in some ways epitomizes
Yes, that's it, brother.
Body supremacy and how it's spoken about.
That's
Talk
right.
to me.
That's right. So, brother, any black body that has any type of kind of communal sense, when we talk about January 6th and what we watch, just as a black body watching that, right? There's a certain level of weight to it when we're watching it. And I remember watching that, man. I remember the day watching that with my wife, and we were sitting there. And at the beginning of the day, when all of this stuff was happening, man, you remember there was a buildup. If you remember, there was kind of like the spring loadedness in the day. Right, that something crazy was getting ready, right? I mean, you had that sense like, is this really? Are these fools really gonna do like? And so I remember watching on TV, man, and seeing like hearing all the rhetoric before that, then hear all the rhetoric during the day, and then watching the cameras pan to the Capitol, right? And you're watching it, and then you see a couple white folks running around, right? And you're like, okay, you know. Then you see a few more white folks milling around. You're like, okay. Then you start seeing more white folks, and now you're starting to see the AR-15s. And I'm like, okay, here we go, right? And I'm watching it. Then you see a couple thousand with AR-15s, and now they're doing the cosplay. They got the helmets on, they got the gloves on, they got the whole thing, right? And I'm sitting there saying, wait a minute, there's a couple thousand people, bodies at the Capitol, and those couple thousand bodies have AR-15s on their chest. They have weapons hosted, and ain't nobody stopped and asked them for ID or why they're walking around with AR-15. Nobody's like in mass. Nobody.
And the contrast, that didn't the sister get shot going the wrong way?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Absolutely right. So I'm sitting there, brother, and then I see the nooses start to pop out. Remember the nooses? They start to bring out the nooses. And one of the things I know about this country's past is that when these are the noose, the gallows, the swastikas, things like that are symbols of our pharaoh past, right? And so there's a ferality of fierceness, a wildness that shows up when you see those symbols, almost like an abandonment. Anything can happen when you start to see the noose and the gallows come out, right? And my body started to constrict while I'm watching that. And my wife goes, you see them walking around with the swastika thing? And I said, yeah. And she goes, my wife goes, this stuff is getting ready to go. And I was like, yeah. When we're sitting there, brother, and then they start kicking out the windows. And then they start wilding out, running up in the scaffold, climbing up the scaffold. Then they start beating the police. And here's when I stopped, because I was writing another book when I stopped writing that book and switched to writing The Quaking of America. When I saw them beat the hell out of police officers, and kick police officers and stomp police officers, and not one of the police officers unholstered their weapon, that's when you knew white body supremacy is a full-fledged thing, right? That even though they were being beat, the police officers did not majority of them did not unholster their weapon.
Okay.
Even though they were being attacked by a violent mob of mostly white bodies. That's what I mean by white body supremacy. Imagine, brother, imagine this. Imagine if it had been me and you and 6,000 Black, brown, and indigenous and Asian bodies doing that same thing. There wouldn't have been enough body bags for them. It would never have gotten to that. And we all, now when I say that, people think, white folks and some people think, oh, that's just hyperbole. But it is not. There's a visceral reaction to how you watch what happened. and what we know in terms of 400 and 500 years of feralness on this country in terms of our bodies, what we know would have happened if the same thing had been in blackface.
Oh yeah.
And so when I'm talking about white body supremacy, I'm talking about it as a structure, not an episode.
And then you see some of us, like you said, mostly white. You see some of us. In fact, here's the other way that white body supremacy works. And wasn't the brother the first one to get convicted? And
Yes, yes,
okay,
yes.
So like it's even then.
That's right, brother. But you see what I'm saying? The idea that the white body is the supreme standard by which all bodies, humanity shall be measured structurally and philosophically. That idea of humanness is true in each scenario. So it's true when you're watching these fools kick out the windows and pee on the floors and poop all over the Capitol. It's true when mostly white people were the ones that did it, but the first one to get convicted is right. It's true when black police officers are beating the hell out of a black man on TV, and people go, "Well, black people do it to each other." No, that's because you're only seeing this as an episode, as an incident, as opposed to a structure and a philosophy. And black bodies have ingested that philosophy that black bodies are worthless also. And so part of our work in terms of healing. Yeah.
Good. Come on with that.
Yeah.
We haven't, say that again. We have ingested black bodies.
The notion that the black body is irrelevant and the black body is useless and the black body shall be subdued. Those notions, we have ingested that also because we have been a part of this structure for 400 years. So of course we have ingested those. Right? And then we play that horizontally on each other's body. And the healing that we spoke about, that you asked about earlier, that healing, brother, that healing that in terms of that ingestment, that is our work. That work has to be done without the white gaze, GAZE. It has to be black body to black body, loving each other, rocking with each other, humming with each other, doing these pieces that show up, literally creating a wellness, a cultural container by which these practices, we can reclaim these pieces that have been brutalized for the last 400 years. That's the piece.
And so as I think about what you're saying, by the way, talking to Resmaa Menakem, author of several books, and really someone who specializes in, I want to call it somatic healing. We'll explain what that is in a minute, but really discussing the retention of trauma, not only in as a result of white body supremacy, which he's explained, but how even that legacy has lived in our bodies as Black folk for 400 years, and how this plays out. And so this notion of how do we heal, brother? And before we go to that, I want to define a few more things. First, traumatic retention.
Yes, brother.
And that's a practice that you talk about in your work as well. And help us understand that, and how we're walking around not even knowing that it's living in us.
That's right. So I'm going to talk about traumatic retention by kind of telling telling the story, right?
Go ahead.
And I'm going to ask the audience just to walk with me for a second.
Come on, we're going with you.
Okay, think about this. Think about this. The average age of rape on plantations was 9 years old. And when I say rape on plantations, the average age was 9 years old, I am not just talking about female enslaved. Black people were never slaves. We were enslaved, which means something happened, right? Somebody did something. A structure was created. We were never slaves. We have always resisted enslavement, right? But the average age of rape on the plantation was 9 years old, because rape was about a power display, a control display, was about a viciousness, a brutality, in order to maintain some type of power and control over people, right? And one of the things I talk about is that, imagine, just everybody that's listening to me, imagine that you come from a people who were raped for 250 years. Just pause for a second. I'm not talking about any of the other violence that absolutely occurred, but just for 250 years, you were raped. You come from a people that were raped in order to create a product that were your children. Now, notice right now, as you've heard me say that, notice what your body is doing just right now. Notice the locking down. Notice the urge to want to turn off the TV or turn off the radio. Notice the tightening in the chest. Notice the throat. Notice the jaws locking down. Just notice those pieces, right? Now, imagine that sensation that you are now noticing in your body. Imagine that was happening in your body for 250 years. Now go back 4 generations and imagine what is the horror and terror your mother must have, your great grandmother's mother's mothers must have experienced by being on a rape factory, which is what plantations were, right? When we talk about rape culture, this country was founded on rape culture, right? So the idea that your great grandmother's grandmother was raped and brutalized. Imagine how she had to conduct and deal with that, and hearing other men and women having that brutality happen to them on a plantation. Now, just imagine. Now put a baby inside of that body.
Mm-hmm.
What might the baby pick up on in the womb with regard to cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, all of these stress responses, all of these stress hormones, in a body where there is no reprieve from the violence? Then that baby is born. And at the age of 9, that baby is attacked and brutalized and born into a structure by which they are seen, and the structure reinforces the idea that they are not human, right? Now put a baby inside of that body. Now, I ain't even talking about the sperm that's affected by the stress. I'm just talking about the baby, right? Now we get to our grandmothers. What notions, what might be retained in my grandmother's nervous system that she leans into or recoils from, that she has no words for? It's just the urge, it's just a vibration, it's just a meaning, right? But she has no context for it. And as she struggles with that, how much is she saying something must be wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
But what shows up in her nervous system, it was never, because one of the things when we're trying to deal with trauma, the number one thing that has to happen with trauma in order to heal from trauma is that it has to stop.
Mm-hmm.
The trauma has to stop, number one, and then there has to be room for the healing. What if the trauma continues for 256 years? You understand what I mean? By the time it lands in us, brother, it looks like urges. It looks like, and we have no explanation for it. Trauma Time, the march of time decontextualizes trauma. If me and you are cool and you see something brutally happen to me,
right,
and then you see me acting strange 2 weeks from now, you're going to sit me down and you're going to go, brother, we got to get you some support. I love you, man. We got to get that shit that happened to you last week, right? But what if the thing that happened to me happened 250 years ago and there is no context for it? So now it's just so trauma decontextualized in a person can look like personality. Trauma decontextualized in a family can look like family traits. Trauma decontextualized in a people can look like culture. This is why we have to slow it down so we know so we can discern things one from another. That's where the healing starts to take place, individually and community.
And I was feeling that description.
That's right.
When you talked about what is the impact of that baby. And so that leads me then to the practice of somatic healing.
That's right. That's
right. And then your practice of what we call somatic abolitionism, which I think is a very powerful way. And essentially we're talking about healing and trauma in the body. So
that's right. So much of the constructs of therapy that like when I was in grad school and stuff like that, many of the constructs around therapy are focused around cognition. Mm-hmm. Right? Even if they say it's not focused around cognition, there's always a genuflect to how people are thinking, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're dealing with something like when I talk about somatic abolitionism, I am saying that we have to take the intelligences of the body into consideration when we're talking about abolishing what is ailing us, right? Mm-hmm. That the body has vibratory intelligence. The body has image and thoughts and cognition as an intelligence. It has meaning making and shifts in discernment as intelligence. It has behavior and urges as intelligence. It has affect and emotionality as intelligence. It has sensate and sensation as intelligence. And then all of those pieces create the seventh intelligence, which I call the intelligence of imagination, right? It's kind of like, to me, the first six are like notes, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
And imagination is like jazz. It's like freestyle and hip hop, right? It is what you do with it to create a container by which you can heal. And so for me, somatic abolitionism is this idea that as Black bodies, in particular, and bodies of culture in general, but Black bodies in particular, we have to reclaim and practice and hone in on the intelligences that were beat, brutalized, mm-hmm. land thefted out of us. We have to slow down those things that now come at us so fast that we override and move right into overwhelm, right? And then that overwhelm now looks like the way that we should react to each other, right? Mm-hmm. And when I say somatic abolitionism, I'm saying the process by which we begin to reclaim the parts of ourselves in slow, pendulated, communal ways. And some of it is reclaiming pieces that we throw away or that we don't see as real intelligence in the Black body and make them standard mooring principles by which we heal. That's somatic abolitionism. You cannot have a healing modality for Black people if it does not contain liberation. If it does not contain liberation at its outset, the utility of it will run out of gas quickly.
So what I'm hearing then, because this is what I'm hearing, because of the legacy of enslavement or the legacy of slavery, right?
And the legacy of the construct of white body supremacy.
Yes, right. So the ways in which we move, then, what you're saying is it must be and I'm thinking of some of our historians, it must be in a liberation construct.
That's right.
Because in order for us to truly be free of the impact of white body supremacy.
And the liberatory construct for me is an embodied construct. It is not a cognitive construct. It is an embodied construct.
Mm-hmm.
The intelligence of the body will allow you to lean in and lean towards your suffering's edges, so what is actually resourcing you can begin to emerge over time.
So this is not a mind thing. This is a body thing.
The mind is always there, but the body pieces will help you navigate the mind. So let me give you an example.
Yeah.
So you know how when I said the thing about imagine you come from people that were raped legally raped for 250 years. And you said, brother, when you were saying that, I noticed something, right? Here's a question I want to ask you. When you noticed that something, where did you notice it? Did you notice it? Did you notice it in your face, in your jaw, in your neck, in your chest, in your stomach?
In your gut.
In your gut. So you noticed it in your gut. Now, did you notice it? And let me just work with you for a second. Did you notice it in your upper gut or in your lower gut?
How do I describe it? It was just a feeling, maybe in the upper. Yeah,
in the upper. So you just something beautiful with your hands just right now. Just hover your hand over that right there. Don't touch it. Just hover it right there. And I want you to notice when you hover over it, that sense that you have in your gut. Is that sense heavy, light? Does it move? Does it rock? Like, what did you notice about that sensation in your gut? Right there. Beautiful.
First, to be honest with you, it's to stop and notice it.
Yeah.
Let's start with that. Let's start with the stopping and the noticing.
Right. Just
what is going on. And so
what do you?
Yeah, go ahead.
What do you notice?
So what I'm describing is just like a settling.
A settling.
Yeah.
Just notice your voice as you said that. Yeah. Just notice that.
Mm-hmm.
And as you notice that settling, is the settling comforting or uncomforting?
Well, I mean, we're moving towards comfort, but when I was listening, it was not comfort at all.
That's right. But you're moving beautiful. You just discerned, your body just discerned the difference from uncomfortable to comfortable. Notice that comfortable. You say it's moving towards comfort. Just notice that. And as you notice that comfort, are there any images that come along with that? Noticing. Yeah, right there.
It's indescribable, but you know what I thought? Can I just tell you the
truth? No. Just stay with this, just because the audience is listening. I want them to hear this.
I just thought about my mother, yo.
Yeah, that's it.
I thought about my mother who's deceased, but that's what I thought of.
Yeah. And notice,
I thought of mama.
That's right. Notice right now, brother. Notice in the audience, I want y'all to notice the belly laugh that he had. And if you could notice your face right now, brother. Notice the openness in your face. Notice that that's liberation. That's resource. That's tied to creation itself. And the trauma thwarts it, right? It doesn't kill it, it thwarts it. It constricts it. And so what we do with these practices and with this work is begin to loosen it over time, so that which is really resourced in you and tied to creation itself can actually emerge. So when I'm working with people, I'm saying we are literally tied to creation itself. Creation itself is an emergent process, is an emergent thing. And when I talk about energy, I'm not talking about it like crystals. I'm talking about it in the way that Einstein talked about it. Einstein said that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but it can be thwarted. It can be manipulated. It can be moved, right? And all I'm doing is working with the body, particularly Black bodies, to say the energy of resource, the energy of connection, of communal resource is with you and within your community. And we have to hone our bodies to be able to work with it, because if you don't hone your body, what happens is your body will interpret even resource as overwhelming.
Well, then having what you just did, then, so now I have to stop right here and say, now we need to practice. So
that's the practice. I just did that was the practice. That's the practice is slowing it down and noticing what you notice and allowing other people. One of the things that you just did is you allowed me to witness you. As you were doing that, as you were sharing that, stuff was happening for me as I'm doing that with you. Right? But what we do is we want to take this thing, we want to take these somatic pieces, right? Or take these pieces, and then we want to put it into, we want to retrofit it into Islam or Christianity or yoga or something else. And what I'm saying is that creation does not need you to work with that. You can work with that simply by what me and you just did. I don't have to move that through being Jewish. I don't have to move that through being Christian. I can move that with me and you over time simply by practicing and getting the reps in. So my conditioning, brother, if me and you were sitting here, and I say this all the time, if me and you were sitting here and me and you have been boys for years, and I called you one day and I said, Brother George, hey man, I need to run something past you. You say, yeah. I said, hey man, I'm thinking about running a marathon.
Right.
And you'd be like, hey man, that's cool. You cool. And you start giving me resources. You say, hey, I know a dude that used to, I'll hook you up with my boy. My boy used to run marathons, blah, blah, blah. And I'm listening to you. I'm like, yeah, man, that's cool. And then you got the bright idea to ask me a question. You said, Resmaa, if you said, you thinking about running that marathon? I said, yeah. You said, when you thinking about running? And I looked at you in straight in the face and I said, tomorrow, right? If I said that to you, all of a sudden your brain and your body is going to do something. You're going to go, okay, now I got to ask some other questions.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if my brother is really I don't know how he's working with this. So I really need to ask him. So your next question would be, okay, brother, have you been running?
Right.
Have you been like, have you run a block? Have you been doing any training? And I looked at you and it looked straight in your face. And I said to you, no, brother, but I did read a book on it. I read this book on marathon running. And then I watched this video. And I'm part of a chat group in this book club on marathon running. Now, all of a sudden, you're starting to get more concerned, right? Right? Because now you understand that what I'm about to put my body through, I am unconditioned to work with it. I am unconditioned to understand nuance. I'm unconditioned to understand weight. I'm unconditioned to understand pain and speed. I'm unconditioned. And I don't understand why we think that race, which has a 400-year-old charge to it, why we think that race, all you got to do is have an opinion about it, and you good.
And you good without the practice.
Without the practice and the conditioning.
So, oh man, a whole lot of things here, but one of the things that occurred to me is, so how do you get white folks to practice?
Okay, I assume, brother, because we didn't talk before, that you understand who I am. So I'm just going to say it the way that I need to say it.
Say it.
It ain't my damn job to get white folks to do a damn thing.
Come on.
Okay. It's not my job. As a matter of fact, in doing that work, when you try and get white folks to do something, you find very quickly that white bodies collectively do not have any efficacy or agility when it comes to race. None. Don't call me or email me talking about allyship and all that stuff. I don't. That is not culture. Those are one-offs. Mm-hmm. And so what I do is I say, here's some things that you can do, but you're going to have to get together with other white bodies and create a living, embodied, anti-racist culture among white bodies. You looking for the black messiah so you can put a bullet through their head? I'm not signing up for that, right? Because If you're not conditioning yourselves and conditioning your nervous system, see, here's the thing. The plantation, brother, the plantation was a mimic from Europe of the king-serf relationship.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
The plantation, brother, the plantation organized white bodies.
Yes, it did.
Let's not even talk about the enslaved. Let's not even talking about the indigenous people that they land thefted. It organized white bodies, and it gave white bodies a place to deal with their thousands of years of rage. It gave poor white bodies some place to put the thousands of years of rage that they had towards elite, more powerful white bodies. They never dealt with that, brother. After the fall of the Roman Empire, they went into Europe went into what we call the Dark and Middle Ages, brother. The Dark and Middle Ages was brutal for white bodies, right? Especially if you was a poor white body, but it was brutal anyway. Plagues and crusades and everything that you can imagine. And then around the 14th, 15th century, that white body started getting on boats. Right?
Right.
And that trauma that happened for them for 1,000, 2,000 years at the hands of more elite white bodies never got dealt with. Right? And then that body came here, came to the islands, came to Canada. And one of the things you know from the work that you do in sexual violence, brother, is that when you are brutalized, you're more likely to brutalize.
Yes, you are. Be brutalized or brutalized. Yep.
That's exactly right. Exactly. So there's an ethos that gets set up in your brain and in your body that says, it's a dog-eat-dog world, and I'm gonna eat you before you eat me. Yeah. And this is not a conscious thing. This is a primal protective thing. And if it goes uninquired, it looks like culture.
Man, like I said, this could be a 9-hour conversation. And I know you're short on time, but let me do this. So you got the new book out. It's called Monsters in Love. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And of course, because couples is also, with all the somatic healing, there's a million other stuff we could do. But let me talk about the new book that's ready now for pre-order right now.
That's right.
That's Resmaa.com.
That's right. Just in case you didn't know.
Yeah. So here's my interpretation. I know what I saw what the summary of the book is about. Yeah. But Monsters in Love. This is my interpretation. Without, like if I was just, what does that mean to me? It basically says to me that we're two people coming together with all our stuff, trying imperfectly together, trying to figure out how we complement, how we don't complement, but that we're coming together as not perfect is what I'm hearing you say, as a monster, and also a monster is a creation of.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Exactly right.
So in the we all come to the table as some sort of creation with all the stuff that we come with. And so how do we process that? That's my interpretation.
That's it.
Okay.
I need to just get that clip and start sending it out.
Word.
Yeah. So, brother, I've been doing this work a long time, man. I've been doing this work, close to 30-something years. And one of the first places I started doing my work with, brother, was couples.
Yeah.
Right. And honestly, when it comes to primarily working with Black couples, man, the ways that I was trained didn't have a whole lot of utility, man. It just didn't. How stuff functions and what I had a mentor, man. So some of my work, man, was around sex and sexuality, right?
Sure.
And I started getting trained around, through ASAC and all that different type of stuff. And one of the things that one of the things that blew my mind, man, I had two mentors, man, um, uh, uh, Dr. James Maddox, who has since passed, and
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Oliver Williams, who does a lot of stuff in domestic violence, and
Mm-hmm.
then another one was Dr. David Schnarch, who just
Mm-hmm.
passed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he blew my mind with, man, one time I was training with him, and he says he was doing this thing with us, and he goes, "Let me ask you something." He said, when is a man's sexual prime, and then when is a woman's sexual prime? And so all of us is, beyond masters, and so we sitting there, we're all smart. It's like 15 of us. We're sitting there, we're all smart. We're like, well, such and such and Kinsey and we're doing all this different type of stuff. And he's just sitting there and he's like this. And when we get done, he goes, here's the problem in the field. Problem in the field is that we have confused genital prime with sexual prime.
Okay.
He said, the reason why we say that a man's sexual prime is at 19 is basically based on refractory period, right? That, after a man, does his thing, he can then, if you're 19, in 30 seconds, you're ready to go again, right?
Right, right.
And then the same for women in terms of lubrication and all of that different type of stuff. That's genital prime. That's not sexual prime. Sexual prime actually develops at the same rate that cellulite does, right? The older you are, the more capacity you have to reveal more of yourself. The younger you are, the more acrobatic you might be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right? And
Right.
so the reason why I'm saying that is that those notions about genital prime and those notions around sexual prime and those notions about how we should be with each other have been downloaded into us. And so we have certain expectations about
Right.
our partners and about ourselves that really go against the face of really how humans interact with each other. So Monsters in Love was my attempt to begin to work with some of the pieces that we believe to be true about how we're supposed to be individually and the function of relationships. Like, the whole idea that, the two shall become one and it's a better half, this is my better half. Those notions actually push us into a bottleneck in every relationship. Right? As long as you're looking for another half of you, you have to control the half that comes to you.
Ooh. Oh man. So brother, did you say that?
And we don't like to talk about those urges that come up, that when our partner is doing something that that to us feel like it's pushing us to an edge, right? We don't like to talk about our power stuff, our manipulative stuff, our hatred of our partner, right? We don't want to talk about that, right? We just want to talk about, well, it's just, when two shall become one, you forgive and you forget. No. Hey, anybody that's been in a relationship over 2 years, if you don't, and that person, and it's just a monogamous relationship, hatred, not dislike, not we have a disagreement.
Right.
Hatred, and we don't want to talk. And so my grandmother or Monsters in Love was my attempt to begin to get at some of those pieces, so we didn't always walk around thinking that something was defective in us or in our partner or in our relationship. But these are the pieces that we have to begin to work with and work through.
So what I'm hearing you say is, if I don't like you today, that's for real.
That's for real.
I don't like you today.
That's right.
And
not only do I not like you,
I don't like you today.
Not only do I not like you, I know there are some times when you look at me and I don't want to believe it, but there are some times when you look at me that I am picking up vibratorily in my body that is not just that you don't like me, but that you hate me.
So that's different.
That's
different. Don't like and hate is different.
That's different, brother. I know the textual difference between when my wife is hating me and when she doesn't like me or is upset with me. There is a difference. There's a vibratory difference. And many of us, when that difference comes up, we have no place to put it. We don't know if something must be going wrong or something must be this. But when you get into a relationship with somebody, the moment you say, I choose you, and it's just me and you, is at the moment that your choices become more finite. At the moment that your choices become finite, you get pushed right up against your adult developmental tasks and issues. Right there.
So let me bring it then into the somatic.
Yes.
Abolitionism.
That's it. You
come
get
on
it
now, right?
You get it.
Bring it into that, because
right.
now here I am, right?
Right?
Because here's what I'm hearing. This is what I think this is where a lot of the is it a mistake? I don't know, however you want to put it.
It's just a learning. We're trying to grow as a field.
When you say this idea like sexual prime versus genital prime, and I'll say for male identified. So what we then confuse is we go seeking genital stimulation.
That's right.
Right? Because we're not willing to invest that because, well, you ain't gonna do that. So let me go over here and swing around somewhere. And
remember when I'm talking about sexual prime,
right?
I am not talking about that divorce from maturity.
Right.
Many of us can't reach our sexual prime because we are perpetually immature. And the things that would allow us to grow up, we keep taking off ramps to get around.
Right.
And relationships, committed relationships, can force you to get up against that thing and force you to begin to make choices in terms of how you want to be as a mature, robust, sexual or mature person. And relationships force you up against that because your choices are finite.
Yeah. And this plays out regardless of your gender.
It plays out regardless of your identity, your gender. The gay couples and lesbian couples that I work with were experiencing some of the same things. Now there are facets that are different,
right?
But the bottlenecks were similar. High desire, low desire for sex. In my gay and lesbian couples, there were people. There was one person who, after they were in for a little while, in the relationship for a little while, there was always one person who had a higher desire for sex than the other one, had a lower desire for spending money than the other one, had a high desire and low desire pieces show up regardless of where things fit.
So in this book, you show how do you to wrap it up? How do we get these bodies to heal in the same ways that we do in the
it's just, brother, it's the same process.
Okay.
It's the same. Sometimes you have to slow down and begin to see what are the historical things that are coming into play in me and between us. What are the intergenerational things that are coming into play between us? What are the persistent and pervasive institutional things that are coming into play? What are the personal pieces, this is what I call hip, that are coming into play between us? And how do I resist the urge to make you responsible for my own growth?
Come on, right?
And how do we do that individually, and how do we do that as a couple?
Let me add this. And what's the work you got to do?
That's right. That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Because
That's right.
I'm not responsible for your growth, but you also got to do some work.
And that's the piece.
Right.
And so in Monsters in Love, I'm really trying to take on these conundrums, these bottlenecks that I saw over the course of the 30 years that I saw repeated, even in my own marriage.
Right.
This is not Resmaa has,
went
up to the mountaintop and came down and said, you know what I mean? No, man, I had to earn some of this stuff.
There you go. Man, Resmaa, man, you're very generous with your time. Listen,
thank you, brother.
Look for the book Monsters in Love. It's available for pre-order right now. Resmaa.com, RESMAA.com. Yep. The brother's got a whole cadre of stuff. If you don't have my grandmother's hands in your Library, get that. Quaking of America, get that.
Yeah.
This brother, you heard what this brother did today. Leave us with something to do right now.
So one of the first things when I'm working with Black bodies, there's one thing that I do that I start off with, and that is the Black body in this particular structure. The Black body has been disoriented.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so what I tell Black bodies, even if you're going to someplace that's familiar, if you're going to someplace that is unfamiliar, wherever you're going, take some time and just look around, and particularly look behind you,
Mm-hmm.
right? The reason why I do that is because when you have been brutalized, or you come from the people that have been brutalized, one of the things that gets passed down is this notion around you can't look behind you. You just keep moving forward. You got to get going, and you override and just get over it and move, right? Like that override for us was beat and brutalized into us, right? We couldn't, if we knew violent things was happening to us or in our community or to people, particularly on the plantation, we had to override it and then in order to get up or to work. And so any things that we should have been able to grieve or work with, we didn't do. So we just moved through it. And so one of the things that happens is that we sometimes when you come from a people like that, you can have this notion that the next shoe is getting ready to drop,
Mm-hmm.
or something bad is about to happen around the corner, or something ominous is going to happen, right? Like you walk around with this piece, and that is something that happens that is a orienting piece. And so one of the first things that I do, and sometimes this lasts for years, is I have Black bodies, indigenous bodies, when they come into my office, one of the first things that I do is have them look behind them and have them find the windows, the doors, and the exits. Primarily because many of us come from bodies that if we stayed, we died. If we left, we died. There was no exits. So reminding the body now that you can leave may allow the body to begin to cultivate more room for resource to emerge.
Mm.
So that's what I would leave the audience with. Start to begin to find the windows, the doors, and the exits, and look behind you.
Resmaa Menakem, Resmaa.com, RESMAA.com. The brother took us on a journey, and that journey begins right now. Let's heal as a community. Let's heal as a people, and let's be mindful. That's not the word I want to use, but let's be. Well, let's recognize.
That's recognized. That's it.
Just recognize what's happening to us in our bodies.
And let me just say one quick thing. And let's also recognize that Black bodies who are listening to this, you are not defective. Something happened and continues to happen to you and your people.
You are not defective. George Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation, Resmaa Menakem, what a pleasure it has been to spend some time with you. Get that new book, Monsters in Love, brothers. Monsters in Love. Pre-order right now. And then once this book circulates, we'll come back and talk a little bit more about that. So that's a quick. I hope you're coming back, brother.
Oh, I'm coming back, brother. You know I'm coming back.
All right. That's Inspiration for the Nation.